I was curious, and I've been trying to figure out a way to incorporate history into what I've been sharing with you, because I feel like when you are able to look at the past, to look back at the past, see what happened. First of all, it's very interesting. And you can relate it to your present. You can learn lessons from the past. So I was curious. And I started to think, well, is there history behind having hard conversations? So I found this 2014 article from Fast Company. And you might remember some of these events that spurred these hard conversations. These are the top two. There was like 14 top 10 conversations, hard conversations from this era, generation, whatever you want to call it. The first, Steve Jobs gets fired. This is 1985. So for those playing along, I was in the 5th grade back in 1985. I have no recollection of this at the moment. Back in 1985, what did I care, right? Still in elementary school, I had probably no idea who Steve Jobs was at that time. And yeah, so Steve Jobs gets fired. Steve Jobs gets fired. Here's how it went down. John Sculley, who was then Apple's CEO, was tasked with boosting sales of the Apple II. No idea what the Apple II was. Jobs, then the chairman and head of the Macintosh division, thought the Macintosh computer should get all Apple II's marketing dollars. So you've got the Macintosh computer, you've got the Apple, right? Did I just say that wrong? The Apple II. Okay, great. Well, the two men clashed. And Jobs said, I'm going to go to the board. And Sculley recounted this recently. Sculley said, I'm going to go to the board. And he said, I don't believe you'll do it. I think he is Steve Jobs. And Sculley said, watch me. The board sided with Sculley, removed Jobs from the Macintosh division, making him essentially a king without a country. He resigned not long after. That was the first event. That's like not so much of a conversation, but a confrontation, would you say? Yeah. The second event, I'm going to highlight the hard conversation here, the impossible conversation here. This was back in 1996, and I for sure remember this. I'm sure you do too. Well, I don't remember this event. I remember the event that led up to this event. Anyway, the second biggest, hardest conversation comes in at number 2. The Unabomber's brother turns him in. So this is 1996. I don't remember this, but I remember the bombing, okay? Here's how it goes. When the Unabomber's brother turns him in. So David Kaczynski, this is not Ted, this is David, was filled with a sinking feeling when his wife pointed out the linguistic similarities. I can't even say linguistic. The linguistic similarities between the 35,000 word manifesto written by the Unabomber and David's reclusive brother, Ted. So the wife is noticing this. In particular, the phrase cool-headed logicians. Say that 5 times fast. It was a feeling of being trapped in this brother relationship, trapped in this dilemma in which people's lives were at stake either way. One way, if we did nothing, another way, another bomb might go off and more people might die. The other way, I turned Ted in and he would be executed. David told The Guardian about his agonizing decision. Finally, David decided to direct the FBI's attention to his brother, who is living in remote Montana. Let's back up with this for just a second. David, who was Ted Kaczynski's brother, now Ted is the Unabomber, David's wife noticed the manifesto from the Unabomber The language, the cadence was very similar to her brother-in-law's language and how he wrote. So she knows this before anybody else knows this. She picks up on this. Can you imagine? Can you imagine her knowing this and then probably wrestling with herself? How do I tell my husband? Do I tell my, like, right? Whew. Talk about having a hard conversation. Awkward. That's to say the least with both of these. Well, the first was, I call it a confrontation between Scully and Steve Jobs. There probably was conversation in there, kind of highlighted some of it. But wow, the second one, awkward to say the least. And are you thinking, well, geez, I'm glad I don't have to have those kinds of conversations. It can always be worse, right? Or are you thinking, well, geez, I'd rather have either one of those confrontations, if it meant not having to have that hard conversation with my mom, with my dad, with whoever, fill in the blank, whoever it is for you. Hard conversations. Do you have them reluctantly? Do you avoid them at all costs? If this is you, if you resonate with this, I've got some solutions on how to make it easier for you. And I will talk about how I've cracked the code. And I have a template for you. I'm going to talk to you about that later. I'm not going to give it to you today, but we're going to just kind of touch the surface on this, right? Because having hard conversations, that's something all of us face. Well, maybe not all of us. Some of us don't want to have confrontations or conversations at all. And so we just don't. So what do you do when decisions need to be made? And in order to make those decisions, a conversation really has to happen. We all react differently, and that's okay. But if you have to have a hard conversation and you really don't want to have a hard conversation, keep listening because I'm going to give you some tips to make it easier. So what about when you have to have a hard conversation with your aging parent? You know, these conversations are usually triggered because your aging parent has had an accident. It happened to my mom. They've injured themselves. You might notice that something is off, or someone else notices that something is off with your aging parent and they come to you. Talk about an awkward conversation. Anyway, no one talks about this stuff because it sucks. That's what one individual said who is taking care of her aging parent and she's running her business. Can you relate? Yeah, this stuff sucks. No one is talking about it, except we are talking about it. I would want to be able to approach every situation in a calm manner, thoughtful and gently firm. I worry that my approach could be interpreted as more forceful than intended. That's what someone else said who's worried about having a conversation, a difficult conversation with her parents, who she sees that needs help. Can you relate to that? There are few things that you can do ahead of the conversation to make it easier. Would you like to know what those are? Okay, get a pencil, piece of paper, or you can just rewatch this video again. The first thing you can do to make it easier on yourself, know what you want to talk about. Going into the conversation, write it down if it helps you, just a couple of bullet points that you would like to talk about. Not to say that you're going to get there in this conversation, but it's nice to know where you're going or where you want to go. Be okay if you don't get anything resolved in that conversation. And also know that this is not a one and done conversation. It's really rather a series of conversations. Finally, be ready to listen. Be ready to listen. That's the top tip that I can give you. Be ready to listen, not to answer, not to respond, just listen. You don't have to respond with anything. You can say, you know what? Let's talk about this again. Easy breezy. I'm going to be sharing the secret formula. This is what I talked about a little earlier that works every time when you're having a hard conversation later on this month. In fact, hard conversations, that's the topic for our monthly coaching call, taking care of business while you take care of an aging parent. And during this call, we're going to be getting to know each other, making connections, networking. And we're going to be talking about our challenges as we are taking care of aging parents and also running our business. And I will do some hot seat coaching. So join me and other entrepreneurs just like you who are taking care of an aging parent on Friday, August 25th, 2 o'clock Central, 12 o'clock Pacific, for our monthly gathering of taking care of business while you take care of an aging parent. I'll leave the link in the show notes so that you can enroll. By the way, your investment is $47 for 6 months, and I have a guarantee. Do you want to hear the guarantee? It goes like this. You show up for the calls and are active in the Facebook community. And if after 60 days you decide this just isn't for you, let me know and I'll refund every penny that you've invested. Whenever you're ready, there are 3 additional ways that I can help you. And I'll be sure to post those links in the show notes. So to recap, having hard conversations, it doesn't have to be stressful. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to, you don't have to run the other direction. You've got this. Take these tips and run with it. And I'll see you next time. Bye.